Hello and welcome to this episode of The Big Picture. My name is Lewis and I will be your illustrious host. Before we get to today's episode, I just want to say thanks for the support in the previous one. We covered GTA 6. Some great ideas put by the guys so we know if they appear in the game. It was entirely our creation. We want royalties for the sale of that. Anyway, today's episode we will be covering Venom. Yes, that Spider-Man movie that wasn't quite a Spider-Man movie. But before we get into the nitty gritty, let's introduce our family of guests here. Coming in first, he was the host last week, so I'll give him the first chance here. He is the resident Venom. It's Stuart Fitzgerald. Stuart, how are you doing?
I'm just peachy, Lewis. I am more than happy to discuss this film. So let's get this turd blowing in the wind.
You know, I'm half tempted just to shut up and give you 5 minutes of rant time here, but unfortunately, we have bills to pay and we can't do that here. Moving on, though. I don't want to give everybody a character name, but this guy really is the carnage of the group. He is the chaotic one. It's Adam Borkiewicz. Adam, how are we getting on today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm free of coronavirus. I don't have a symbiote living inside of me, so I think I'll be good to go.
Yeah, I like that description. What I liked was that when you said it, I was like, it's probably me, but I don't want to be ready just in case it was like someone else. You threw it to another person, you know?
Nah, there's no curveball here, mate. You fit that character description pretty much perfectly. And moving swiftly on as well, we have our resident Eddie Brock. He is the smooth, the ultra charismatic man himself. It's Reese Cook.
I really thought you were going to say Jack there, to be honest.
I think a few of us probably would be, but let's face it, you are the Tom Hardy of this group.
Oh, I'm not going to comment on that right now, and you'll see why later. I just want to say, last time I was on, I was saying that Scotland were going to qualify for the Euros. Did Scotland qualify for the Euros? Yes, it did!
I can boogie.
Back to you, Lewis.
Yes, football. Woohoo! Anyway, and last and certainly a lot least, we'll give him his due. He has no reference to this movie because, well, he's just the last one is Jack Graham.
Yeah, my thoughts are the exact same for the movie. That's just not there, irrelevant. I respect it, as an accurate introduction for my thoughts in this film. So, well done.
Before we get any further, though, there was one oversight, and that is the congratulations of the People's Champion of last week's episode, and that is Adam with over 58% of the vote. Congratulations, Adam. How does it feel to be People's Champ?
It's great. It's the first time I've ever heard both titles, Big Picture and People's Champion. So it's
unheard of. You done well. You capitalized a lot on the votes there. You did really well.
Thank you.
And in case you're wondering what we're talking about here, we discussed the episode, we pick an arbitrary winner, but really the true winner is the People's Champion. So you can head over to Twitter and our Instagram @_the_big_picture, and you can see what we're all about. Give us a follow. And hey, we interact with you guys, get a couple of ideas, and even see what you guys would have done. So why don't you go back to that and let us know what you would want to do for GTA 6. But, as mentioned, we are doing Venom. Now, in case you haven't seen this movie, I'll do my best to summarize what plot... Well, there isn't a plot, really. It's a movie with a guy. That's really it. It follows that of Eddie Brock, an investigative reporter who is being assaulted by a symbiote named Venom. The original plan was to take over the planet and conquer us because they're aliens. But then Venom falls in love with Eddie Brock, I think. I'm not really sure. And decides to stay and save the world from the other symbiotes that are in the movie. Aside from that, it's really the thing that really matters that happened here. As you can tell, the movie didn't really do that great because it was a very middling plot, shall we say. Reviews were a bit mediocre. A lot of the reviews were saying not much direction. So, it's fair to say the movie did very well. What we're going to do is try and fix that. But first, let's have a look at the movie. Let's see what's really going on here. Now, one big complaint was at the time the Marvel-verse was kicking off. Spider-Man had his own movies. And some people thought it maybe lacked a bit of star power. So I'm going to go to you first, Reese, because you're probably not really the biggest comic book guy here. And a common complaint was the fact there was a lack of Spider-Man in this film. Was that a problem for you? Because Venom maybe doesn't have the same sort of cultural relevance as, say, a villain like the Joker. Did you maybe not struggle, but like just find a lack of care because there wasn't that power there?
Is Venom part of the Spider-Man universe?
That kind of answers that question, then, doesn't it?
I don't see. To be honest, Liz, I actually didn't know until I watched the movie, and then there's like a 5-minute short clip at the end of like animated Spider-Man. I didn't really know what that was either, but until then, I didn't realize that this was part of the Spider-Man universe until I looked it up. So, you could put Spider-Man in this film to give it more star power, like you said, but it wouldn't fit the plot of the movie, which I thought you did a bit of it injustice to. I think there is a plot. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's definitely not the worst one we've covered yet either.
Oh no, definitely
not. Definitely not Suicide Squad. So
no.
I just don't think there's anywhere in this movie for Spider-Man. So yes, it does lack maybe the star power of a Spider-Man and like the name of a Spider-Man, because like I said, it's not quite Joker. Venom's not got that big name. Like I didn't know that it was part of the Spider-Man universe, but I just don't see anywhere in this movie for Spider-Man to be in it.
And that's a fair point. I think a lot of people were maybe hoping for an integrated universe, especially now that Sony owns Spider-Man and Venom. But when it comes to large conglomerate companies, you don't always get what you want.
Do you ever?
No, you never do. But there was one, for me personally, and Adam also, it's a bit of a running joke here. There was one good thing to come out of this movie, and that was Eminem's rap Venom. Now, I don't want to burst out into song, but was that like the only best part of the movie for you? Was there any highlights that you had that was like, oh, that actually wasn't too bad? Or was it just Venom?
I have to admit, when that credit song came on in the cinema, first I was relieved because it was the credits, but then also I was vibing, I was dancing in the cinema. No, it's not a great song, but it's a meme, and I respect. That's what I expect with it. Eminem either makes a good song or a meme, but the actual film, there's one thing I liked about it a lot. I would say would be the size of Venom, the scale. I thought that was very authentic. Apart from that, it's a lot of middle lane. I think you said that you'd use the perfect word, mediocre. I think that's the perfect word for this movie.
Like Venom does have a bit of presence around him, which I think they kind of needed to give because, as Reese pointed out, there's not a lot of star power. But when Venom appears on screen, you're like, oh, that is a dude, that is a big threat that's going on here. But if Eminem was Venom, I might have cared more.
I would have.
Now, Jack, you provide interesting perspectives here, and I was told by a very important person in my life that they really love this movie because, quote, the movie has just enough humor to keep me entertained. Do you fall into that category? Was it just a crock of crap for you? Was there any redeeming qualities for you?
I'm sorry to say, Lewis, but that very important person in your life is fucking wrong. This movie's abysmal. I was not a fan. I don't know why I thought it was going to be good. Obviously, you hear Venom and it's like, oh, that's quite cool. It's the Spider-Man universe type thing. You hear Tom Hardy's going to be cast and you're like, yes. And you just get this hot pile of shit and it's so bad and I'm so annoyed by it. I wanted it to be great and unfortunately it wasn't.
Somebody once told me when we were at uni and I was staying down the road, I was working down there, somebody I worked with told me it was the best movie they had ever seen. And they watched it 5 times. And they kept saying up, they go, you have to watch it. It's really good. It's really good. When someone tells me that a movie's good, I never watch it because I'm always disappointed. So I was never going to watch it until this podcast came around. But yeah, they kept saying, oh, this is the best movie ever. It's so good. And I was like, surely not that good. And then sure enough, it's not. So I was very annoyed at that as well.
What other films had they seen?
I was going to say, what's the top 5?
What was their other favourite? If that's their favourite, what was second place?
Avatar.
Suicide Squad, I think, was one of them.
Right, I guess. So echoing that tone, Stuart, it's very clear you do not like this movie. And without giving you an unfiltered 5 minutes just yet, I'm sure your pitch is very well creative with sources and all that kind of jazz. Was there anything that you liked about the movie? Was it just also like Jack, crock of shit, and you just wanted to turn it off as soon as you turned it on?
I think you'd have an easier time, asking me what didn't annoy me in this film because I pretty much don't like anything about it. maybe the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock. I like that. Ultimately, when the symbiote began to like him and take like a personal interest in his safety, and also like his personal life, I like that. But there's a scene like where the symbiote's like, "Oh, I'm inside your head, Eddie. I know everything about you." And then the next scene, Tom Hardy's ex is phoning him, and the symbiote's like, "Who's that? Who's phoning you?" And I'm like, "You just said you knew everything about him, and you don't even know who's phoning him."
Yeah, there seems to be an inconsistency in the film.
Also, it took that old woman 6 months to reach the airport. What the hell? Like there was a 6 months later thing, and she only just reaches the airport. How did it take her 6 months to get there?
I just want to say also on the bit at there about how he didn't know who was phoning her. There's one scene where it's got don't answer the door, and then the door goes. So he clearly knows what's going on around. So he knows he can read what says on the phone before the guy picks it up because he knows someone's about to knock on the door. I didn't get that either. I was annoyed at that part too.
So yeah, I mean, plot inconsistencies aside, I mean, I don't like anything about the acting's pretty awful. Like even Tom Hardy, and he's usually the saving grace for me, but I didn't like him in this. I especially didn't like whoever played his ex or the villain. Or the villain was so boring, and the CGI is also pretty shit as well. It's not a nice looking film, so not a lot to like.
So it's a very irksome movie, but I guess I think you're probably more likely to remember this than 90s animated Spider-Man cartoon. Now in that, Venom was just a villain, but in this he seems to be a bit of a kind of, I don't know, anti-hero. Would you have preferred that to stay the same, Stuart, or would you preferred it to be like, oh, he's a straight villain?
I mean, if we're talking about like adaptations, I would have preferred the actual storyline, that includes Spider-Man. But I don't know, because to have Venom as a character, like not even touching his origins with Spider-Man, I think you'd just be better off putting another character in there. I mean, it's not as if the Marvel universe is low in symbiotes because there's that many of them. There's probably about 50 symbiotes that they could, but they only put Venom there because of the name recognition. Apart from like people that didn't know who he was, like Reese.
Yeah, actually, the 90s TV show, which is like one of my favorite shows ever. Venom is brilliant in that because he's so good because he's this villain. He's so dark actually for a cartoon, like dark, and I thought that was something that this film was missing for me. Not to go into too much detail, but I really liked that show, and I liked the symbiotes in it. I liked Venom and Carnage. I thought they've done really well, and I'm sure people, if you remember, like the big plot, the last episode is going to another dimension where Spider-Man gets involved with the Carnage symbiote, and that's like another good sort of like. I just think it's a great show. Go watch that. Don't watch this film.
Me and Adam were speaking the other night. We were just talking about general thoughts about Venom. And I brought up the thing about that you mentioned, Lewis, about he's kind of like an anti-hero in this movie. And I feel that like they've tried to play too much to the casual audience on that part because it's Tom Hardy who's Eddie Brock. I felt that by going down, I was like Marvel fans, like we know ourselves that Venom is essentially a villain and a bad guy. He's played him as this kind of anti-hero protagonist. It's hard to kind of actually understand who or what Venom and Eddie Brock is because of that.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think it's not exactly the best comparison, but X-Men Origins Wolverine, like Wolverine has a bit of character and known about him culturally, so it's easier to make that a more of a darker rated R movie, which not that it wasn't rated R per se, but it was definitely more brutal and a bit more realistic. With Venom, I think, as you said, they kind of want to keep it at a franchisable level with the other Marvel verses, but still try and keep it interesting, and it just sits in that limbo period, which is kind of, I guess, a synonym for the whole movie. It just kind of sits in that limbo bit. But one thing I will say, and Tom Hardy's acting in this is up, down. He's very committed. He's very committed to this, and it is, well, one of two movie portrayals of Venom. So, Adam, did Spider-Man 3 ruin Venom?
No, actually, right, this is funny, because see, when I watched this film, the first thought I had in the film, watching it again, I've got it in my notes. Well, actually, my first thought is classic symbiote landing vibes. But the next thought is this is rushed. It was this. You meet Eddie. It's rushed. He's got his life together. Oh, look at him. He's a journalist. Whoa, wow. He's a cool guy. He's got a girlfriend. Oh my god. He's got this big interview. Then it goes wrong. It's gone like that. And then we're meant to care. What I will say, one thing Spider-Man 3 did well, and it's not a good film, and there's not a lot of things I like about it. It did well. It was Topher Grace played Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock's he's in it early on as a character. You get to know him. You get to dislike him. You know why he doesn't like Spider-Man. You know. Then when it all falls apart, you can blame it all on Spider-Man. So it makes sense that when he becomes Venom, that he's driven, like he's got motivation, which is more than. Because he does have motivation in this, but like he's got a stronger motivation. He's got he works better as a villain in that. But again, Topher Grace, he doesn't do a great job. I don't know. It's not who I would have cast. But at the same time, I do think that film does a better job explaining who Eddie Brock is as a character.
Is it just me, or is everyone in the Spider-Man universe a journalist? Is that the only job that goes around in that universe? That was the first thing that annoyed me about this film. Sorry,
Stephen King.
That point out there.
Yeah, it's like Stephen King. Everyone's a writer in his universes, and everyone's a journalist in the Spider-Man universe. You're
just like, it's that Daily Bugle again.
I can't wait for the inquiry to when the police actually look at them. Like, hang on a minute, half of these villains they all originate from the same office, never mind the same building.
Well, I mean, I will say at least James Jonah Jameson's son, whose name escapes me. He's an astronaut, so I guess that you can either be an astronaut or a journalist. There is no in between. But one thing I think the movie also lacks is, well, I mean, it lacks the fair things. The plot is fairly inconsistent, but it doesn't really seem to have a core messaging behind it. Now, Reese, you're pretty well versed in movies that have, real, meaningful, and purposeful and powerful messaging behind them, especially ones grounded in reality. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that was a key fault of Venom? Was there was no key message behind it? There was no sort of purpose behind it?
I get what you mean. The problem is when I come over to superhero movies, I don't anticipate getting a good message, like a hidden meaning, or a good story that has like a dark meaning behind it that could be related to life. So yes, it does lack it, but I don't expect it at the same time. I just expect a good, bad guy be good guy be bad guy kind of vibe, and in this case it was bad guy v not so bad guy. So yeah, I was just a bit weird the plot.
So here first, folks. Reese agrees with Martin Scorsese. Marvel movies were not actually movies.
Yeah, they're not real movies. They're kind of things that you watch in your spare time.
I guess they are somewhat you want a movie that you can kind of watch, turn off, and just kind of ignore the world for a while and appreciate for what it is. But one thing the Marvel movies generally do is give you some sort of I don't know. I don't want to say purpose and meaning, but there's a story there. There's an arc. There's an overbridging thing. And each individual character have their own character traits that are a bit more purposefully explored, which I think is maybe where I think I'm getting with the Venom thing, is that as Adam explained with Spider-Man 3, Brock's motivations were better explained then than now, and it kind of jumps around a bit too much.
Yeah, Lewis, don't get me wrong. When I watched Joker, which obviously I know isn't affiliated with the actual universe, but when I watched that had a good story. I mean, a bit controversial. Some people either love it or they hate it, but I thought the story behind it and the darker, deeper meanings were brilliant, and the way it touched on mental health and the top 1%, capitalism, stuff like that. It was really good. So you can get it and you can put it into movies like this. But I just when I come over to watch films like Venom, I don't anticipate that, so I can't be disappointed when it's not there.
I can appreciate that. I think Venom maybe isn't the platform for it. Maybe it just doesn't quite fit. But as the resident music man, Jack, would you like to add a 80s soundtrack to Venom and fix it?
I don't know. Can you ask someone else a question? I'll start looking.
Wait a minute. How is Jack the resident music guy? His favourite artist is Will Smith. He knows nothing about music.
He listens to the most. It's quantity over quality.
Well, in order to give Jack some more time to scour his very shallow Spotify playlist, Stuart, did you have something you wanted to add on the back end there?
Yeah, it's just kind of what Reese was saying as well, that the problem with this film is that it's almost as if it was written like years ago, because I feel like we've hit a stride with the superhero movies, because everyone's kind of over the origin story. It's not enough now to make a generic superhero film. As Reese said, you have to have a hint of other genres into them, like the Joker, or like Logan is a western, and the Dark Knight's more like a crime drama. But Venom just kind of shows up late to the party with all these old cliches, and it's awful dialogue, and it just falls flat. And like something from the 90s, it tries to be so hard to be edgy, and it's rated 15, but I don't know for what reason. Like, you don't see much blood or graphic violence. It's all implied that heads are being ripped off and everything, but you barely see it. I mean, yeah, you've got people like saying shit and somebody calls someone a pussy, but guess what? The Ant-Man movies do that too, and they're released by Disney. Like, it's the softest 15 rated film I've ever seen. I don't know if it was meant to be more graphic and then the studio backtracked on it. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, but I don't get what it's going for.
Yeah, I'd actually heard that when it was in production, that there was this big call and there was pushing it was going to be R-rated, and then they did a bit of a U-turn and decided against it. So I think you're kind of right, Stuart, in that there's maybe a 15 because they pushed halfway, if you want, and then had to like cut it all back.
You look at like Deadpool, it's a 15. Like, it earns its rating. I mean, I'd probably get an argument for it to be an 18, but it uses that rating to not only tell a story that it couldn't do otherwise, but also to use like that kind of violence and that kind of like profanity, I suppose we'll say, like to the full extent. And it doesn't. If you took all of that out of Deadpool, it wouldn't be the same movie. So it's probably the same with Venom. There'll be a cut somewhere where it's probably meant to be the full extent of what they planned, but the studio again hacked it to pieces.
I'm fully expecting like Snyder cuts to become a very normal thing where directors start taking a bit more power for the movies that are shown after the fact, depending on like what the audience want. But I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes a thing. And maybe like the reason Venom was pulled back was for franchise purposes with Spider-Man. But that kind of character, if you're going to do an origin story, you have to make the movie a bit more enticing and exciting, especially for the audience that knows who Venom is. Not that you'd cater to that audience anyway, but there still has to be a bit more excitement around the movie. And I think that's probably a bit of a shame that the Sony director, decided to pull back on that one. Anyway, Jack, you figured out an 80s soundtrack yet for Venom?
I think I have.
All right,
so.
okay.
Oh.
Let's hear this mini pitch in the middle of this episode, impromptu, because I want to put Jack under pressure.
I want the big fight and then see the end of the movie where like Tom Hardy just having the conversation with Venom, just like they're going down the street to a shop or whatever. I want to finish this off, Elton John, I'm Still Standing.
Oh. I mean,
You know?
fair enough.
Yeah, I hate it, but
I don't hate
Pretty
it.
cliche, but you know.
Well, double down. It's already got
Yeah.
cliches. It's double down.
It's a film riddled in cliches, so you know, like
It
I've
works.
seen the scene where it like shows you the bad guy's lair and it's on the side of a cliff and you're just like, be original. I was really annoyed at that as well. I was just annoyed at a lot of things.
one point I actually want to make about this movie, right, is when Tom Hardy's in the car and like no MRIs, like why, and like sounds are lethal to it, and then his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, goes, so it sounds like it's kryptonite. So this movie is acknowledging that either DC Universe exists or the comic book at least exists in this realm as well, and I was really confused by that. I never thought Marvel would
I
actually
quite
pay
like
attention
that.
to it.
I quite like that because I feel like when you say kryptonite now, like even people who don't watch superhero movies, they probably don't even know that it's related to Superman. They just know that that's your Achilles heel, as it were, in English. So I quite like that bit.
Bring back Achilles' heel as a
Yeah,
common expression.
Maybe it was
It's a classic. That's what I want to use.
Classic.
The directors just don't care. They just don't care at all. They're like, oh, you know, put a superhero oil and put kryptonite in it. Oh, the nerds will love that shit. You know, they'll be coming in their seats if they hear that.
They're like, someone's gonna make a podcast and then make the fact that I made a DC comic and a Marvel movie. Well, sir, you won.
What's the difference?
I also thought as well it was quite cliche. It was the bad guy with the biblical metaphors, and he just loves symbiotes, and there's no explanation for it. He just loves them. He's just like, yep, they're great, and I really want to bond them with people, and I love the Bible. Well, I don't know who says that, but he's like, here's a Bible story. Reese, I know you're probably the most religious one here. I'm sure you were moved by when he starts talking about Abraham and Isaac.
You should have had me. I was in tears, mate. I was rooting for him at that point. Prick.
I love how also he's like got all these homeless people that they have the audacity to die when like these aliens are implanted in him, and he just stands there and he's like, what's it he says? Oh, they're so old fashioned, human bodies. And I'm like, what are you on about, you stupid dick? Oh,
poor design.
It's like, poor design. That's what it is. They're poorly designed, the human body. But you knew when
he was going to say it.
Yeah, man. You knew when Eddie was talking to that homeless woman and she steals the papers, and then the next day the papers are in the thing and the homeless woman's not there. You knew exactly where she was. It's not as if it was like, come on, make it like make my brain work. I want to think when I'm watching this. I don't want to just be like, oh well, I wonder where she is.
Maybe that's the message.
It did the opposite for me because I fell asleep. Because I actually forgot all about that homeless woman. I was like, "Who's this?" And then I was like, "He knows her." And then my girlfriend was like, "That's the homeless person." I was like, "Oh right."
Wow, Stuart doesn't care about homeless people. He walks right by them. Doesn't even look. That's the message here.
I care about the homeless. I care about the homeless. I don't care. What I don't like is people monopolising on newspapers, Adam. All right, $5 for a paper that's free. No wonder she's homeless.
I thought about to say I don't like folk monopolising the homeless, so like folk like getting like a group of homeless folk to work for, and it's like you're going to take this much money a day, and you're going to give me this much of a cut of it.
That's the only point I agree with the villain. Just get rid of them all.
Well, you got to. He took care of the homeless issue. He took them off the streets, killed them all, and then what more do you want? No homeless in America anymore.
No more taxes. No more taxes.
No more taxes. People over 20k have to start paying more tax, Jack. What's that all about?
It's quite frankly not good enough.
Not good enough for us Tories.
More in press promotions. Okay, so we've kind of covered the base of the movie and a lot of stuff we didn't like. We've ragged on it a lot, but it's definitely the worst movie we've tackled here at the big picture. But that is the next step to tackle this movie. So, in order to give us a first pitch, I'm going to go to Jack. Give us your first and strongest pitch to save Venom.
Well, I submitted two to you, and I think I'm going to go with the second one, and that is... I can't even mind the bloody guy's name. Jesus Christ, Jack, come on.
Wow.
Rock.
No, not him. The bad guy.
I think his name is
Drake. Carlton Drake.
Carlton Drake.
Venom.
He is not the bad guy anymore. I hate him as the bad guy, and I hate Riot as the symbiote as well. So I'd make Jenny Slate the villain, and I'd make the symbiote scream. I feel that Riot is just a more amplified version of what Drake is, and he's too similar to Venom in the way of looks as well. I just feel as if it's out of all the living symbiotes they could have had, they went for the one that was just most similar. And I mean, I don't like the name Riot, but I don't like the name Scream either. It's a hard thing to try and fix a shit movie like this, but I'm going with this. Make Jenny Slate the villain and make the symbiote scream, and I'd have, obviously you see in the movie that Eddie begins to embrace Venom, that symbiote, but I'd have Jenny Slate kind of fight against Riot, and Riot becomes a homicidal, just want to kill anything and everything, and that'd be a better interaction between the two, and obviously they kind of on-off relationship, partnership or whatever, so it makes it more personal for Eddie as well. That's mine.
Jack, I'll tell you what, normally I'm like, Jack, I'll vote for you, mate. Us boys got to stick together because we get picked on the most. But you've lost a vote for me this week already because I don't know any of the words you've just said. So I'm sorry to say that you're not getting any votes from me.
Lost the everyman vote. The people's vote.
Jack, see when you say you've got Scream, all right, and she's doing what Venom does, like biting heads off and everything like that. Will you have Man-Eater by Hall & Oates playing when she does that?
Yeah, that will come before I'm still standing.
Good to know. It's good to know. I just have an idea of the track list, and that's I'll take that into consideration.
Yeah,
I think
that's my
You
pitch.
might
That's my
have
pitch.
saved the vote.
I'm
Might
surprised.
have brought it back.
Surprised Jack's pitch every week isn't. I want to add this 80s soundtrack. But I mean,
I'd vote for it.
well, certainly, if you just install Rocky soundtrack into a lot of movies, it'd make them 10 times better. One thing I will say, Jack's pitch does add like a personal element to it. It gives a more interesting dynamic between the villain and the hero. I mean, anti-hero or villain, depending on what way you want to take it. It is an interesting pitch. It does provide a unique dynamic. So, I mean, I could see the appeal of it. But, hey, I'm not here to cast my opinion. That's up for our illicit audience and you other three people. But next, we'll go to Stuart. I believe he's probably got a good 10-minute rant in him first before we get this pitch, but you know what? We'll make the time for it. Stuart, what you got?
I'm only allowed 10 minutes.
I'll give you 11 if you're nice.
11. I feel like I need to preface any argument I make with the fact that I love the character Venom from like the comics. The first ever graphic novel I ever got was The Birth of Venom. And it was like his comic book origins all the way up from him like first interacting with Spider-Man. I've said a lot about this film and what I didn't like, but the biggest flaw of Venom is that there's no Spider-Man. Simple as that. Spider-Man is so important to Venom's backstory that this film suffers for it because it doesn't live up to its full potential. And no doubt the sequels, when they show up, will be the same as well. Because like by taking Peter Parker completely out of the picture, it's got this huge domino effect of Sony probably having to take something else out and then another thing to compensate. Like, and what they're left with are these gaping holes in the story that, to their credit, they do try to fill. They don't fill them well, but it's never going to be as good as what they were originally, and the story suffers for it. Because like Venom gets his look from Spider-Man's costume. Like he only bonds to Eddie Brock because Peter Parker gets rid of the symbiote, and given the choice, the symbiote will always attempt to go back and bond to Spider-Man. So the absolute worst thing is that over at the MCU, we're currently watching, in my opinion, the best iteration of Spider-Man in film with Tom Holland. It's so classic Spidey, but also it's a new spin on it that it doesn't feel like a rehash of anything. Because in those films so far, the villains that we've had with Vulture and Mysterio, they have been incredible. Like, I absolutely love what they've done with those villains. And now, thanks to Sony rushing this film out just to make money, probably, like if they had waited, they could have had Venom show up in the MCU, have his story start with Spider-Man, and then they could have branched out with the spin-off movies like this that are more graphic and adult with the likes of Carnage and Toxin and Scream, as Jack said. So ultimately, for me, we've been robbed of not just Venom showing up in the MCU and interacting with those characters, but we've also lost a really good Venom Spider-Man story within that universe. And the film that we've got, it doesn't make up for that loss for me. So I don't know if this is allowed, and I'm fully prepared for this pitch to be, I don't know, disqualified or not counted, because the pitches, you know, have to be changed in some aspect of the original, but I don't want to change anything. I just want this gone. I just want this movie completely just gone. I contemplated pitching. There we go. See, I honestly contemplated pitching just put it in the MCU, but I feel it's too soon because they've taken such great measures to erase all traces of Spidey from the plot. It would just need this huge new plot to be pitched, and I couldn't be bothered doing that. I also thought about just putting in another Spider-Man into the film, like even Scarlet Spider or something, instead of Tom Holland. But to be honest, that's the only Spidey I would want facing off against Venom, which would be Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man. So yeah, just get rid of it completely. That's my pitch. Get it chucked.
We're approaching uncharted territory here every week. But I'm not against the idea. Truly, I'm not. One question I do have though for you, Stuart, is you're obviously well versed in the origin of Venom. Now, at what point in Peter Parker's life does Venom show up? And the reason I ask that is because obviously the Spider-Man we have shown so far in the Marvel universe is a younger, up and coming, learning Spider-Man under the guise of Iron Man, kind of in line to become with the new Avengers. Now, perhaps we can maybe rephrase the pitch to wait until Tom Holland grows up and becomes 35 years old, which by the look of him will take 40 years because he's just a wee boy, even though he's 20. But is that kind of a more of a suitable option for you, or are you just like, no, definitely not, I want completely everything gone, Tom Holland will just have to do?
I just completely get it, because I did contemplate it, but I'm more interested in what the story they've got to tell with Tom Holland. It sucks that we won't get Venom in there, because Venom doesn't show up until a good, I think she shows up in the 80s, and Spider-Man like first came about in the 60s, so like he is like a young man when he meets the symbiote for the first time, because he does have a job, and obviously that's kind of like Eddie Brock is also employed with him. But I feel like we've also had that story as well with Spider-Man 3. It wasn't done great, but it's certainly better than this trash fire. So like I'd be more prepared to just say, nah, I'd rather have no Venom in cinema if it wasn't going to be done right.
So you know what, I'm going to allow that to appear. I will
Get
put
it
my
up, you Reese!
I'm gonna put down my
I
fist.
can boogie, boogie,
Stuart's pitch is to remove it from
I'd
existence.
sooner vote for Jack's one, and I don't even know what Jack's pitch was. So get up, you.
I guess, yeah, we'll allow it. Remove Venom from existence. And the next person we'll give their chance to pitch is the illustrious, the smooth talking, the man who ensembles jazz. It's Reese Cook. Give us your pitch.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Anyway, getting on to my pitch. Now, right, I didn't really know anything about Venom, so it was always going to be quite difficult for me to pitch it. So my pitch is to just get rid of Venom. That's it. No, okay. I'm kidding. Right, no.
It gets my vote.
I actually thought that the character Eddie was a lot more complex than what Tom Hardy portrayed it as. And we've had some people talking during this saying some good things and some bad things about his performance. But my one is, I just don't think that Tom Hardy portrays the character as well as what the character could have been portrayed. Because this character is obviously, he's on top of the world at the start of the movie. You know, he's vulnerable enough to propose to someone, and then, you know, put his heart on his sleeve and propose to someone, and he gets engaged, and then he loses everything. He loses his job, he loses his fiance, she leaves him, and it's just, his whole world comes crashing down, and, you know, it just doesn't seem that emotional. Like, obviously, the film and the story is portraying it as an emotional part of his life, but he himself doesn't fit that role. And then when it comes to Venom overtaking his body, I feel like Tom Hardy's too much of an alpha, because I feel like when, you know, the symbiote is overtaking your body, you need to be kind of a bit of a beta to be like, okay, you know, you're scared, you're gonna let this happen. Because I feel like Tom Hardy realistically would be like, yeah, kill my body, and he would fight it if it was like a, you know, Tom Hardy in any other film. I just don't think he has the range to take that over. So I went over a few candidates to.
I swear to God, if you say Shia
overtake.
LaBeouf, I'm just kicking you out of this.
To overtake and have the new lead. So my first thought was Brad Pitt, but then I thought it was just a similar thing. I feel like Brad Pitt has more of a range in terms of emotion, but I feel like, again, too much of an alpha, so I cut him out. Then I thought, do you know who'd be a great idea? Tom Holland. But then I just don't think that would work for some reason. You know, I'm not quite sure. But I feel like there's a reason in there. Adam said Topher Grace played him in a previous movie, and I actually thought, you know, that sounds good. But then Adam said he didn't do a good job of it. But I feel like Topher Grace is kind of along the right lines. I then thought, Stuart was right when he was pitching his one a few episodes back. He could have gone for Matt Damon and got all the votes. And I feel like if I went for Matt Damon again, it would be a bit of a cop-out. I think it's just too easy and too safe. You know, you need to put your pitches out there. They need to be memorable. So I've gone for Shia LaBeouf.
Oh my
The best character. I'm kidding. I'm not an idiot. So I've gone for Michael Cera.
Oh.
I know what you're thinking. Whoa, that is out there. But let me get this. Let me get this. He's shown he's naturally funny, and I feel like the relationship between Eddie and Venom, you have to be naturally funny, and I feel like the awkwardness of Michael Cera would work a lot better than Tom Hardy's humor. And then we've also so we've seen that he's naturally funny from films like Superbad. And in the later seasons of Arrested Development, he shows that he can be quite aggressive and taken seriously, and he is engaged in fights and that. And if you've ever seen Molly's Game, you'll see that he's got a bit of a sinister enough side to him that he can be an alpha when needed. Like particularly in the scene where it's the police officers all go mask on, and then Tom Hardy says mask on. I think that's a good scene. And I feel like. If you've ever seen this scene, and if you've not seen it, it's from Molly's Game. I know you might not have seen the film. You can Google it. Molly's Game, Cap Your Tip scene. The scene there, he portrays a really sinister side to Michael Cera that people might not necessarily know he's capable of. And I think he has more of a range in terms of emotion, vulnerability, and the ability to be sinister, and the fact that he is more of a beta person than Tom Hardy, which I feel like is important if you're going to be overcome by a symbiote. I feel like my pitch, Michael Cera as Venom / Eddie, that is my pitch. Take it or leave it. Love it or hate it.
Well, I hate it. Stuart, any thoughts?
I just say that is a stroke of genius by Reese that I know is intentional. Because for those that don't, Reese will know this obviously because there's no other reason why I pitched this. But for those that don't know, in Molly's Game, Michael Cera he's actually playing a parody of Tobey Maguire, who played Spider-Man originally, and that's why he's picked him. So it's a stroke of genius by Reese, and that you knew all along. So absolutely,
I knew this. I just didn't put it in there because I didn't want to confuse people.
Exactly. We're on the same wavelength.
Same wavelength, you and I. Maybe I'll vote for you after all.
I'm not against it. I'm not against the whole Michael Cera thing, but I feel that the relationship would need to change between the symbiote and Eddie Brock, like Venom and Eddie Brock, to make it work. I don't think it's something that I was going to pitch, but I won't say it in case Adam ends up pitching it and ruins it. But I think the relationship would need to be different.
No, I'm not saying it would be the exact same dialogue. That's what I did kind of touch.
I mean, you said it would still be comical though, like in that kind of way.
Yeah, but it would, because Michael Cera is naturally funny and he's more awkward, which I feel would work better with something taking over your body and talking to you and telling you what to do. And that I feel like being awkward and kind of submissive would work better than what is now. Adam, any thoughts?
Yeah, you feel like he's you think he's got the ability to play along those big stars, like in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's already played alongside Chris Evans, so he can work with superheroes.
Great.
So,
cool.
Great.
Thanks
Thanks
for coming.
Yeah. He also worked with Jason Bateman and Will Arnett, and Will Arnett plays the best Batman. So there you know.
I guess
He also played Robin in the Lego Batman movie, Michael Cera.
Yeah, and Carl Weathers from Mandalorian. He's in Arrested Development as well. So
this has turned into one of those connected dots.
Name
That's just like
actors.
5 stages of Kevin Bacon.
Trouble pursuit. This podcast is now.
I mean, I'm not the judge here. You people are. So we'll see how well Reese does with that pitch. We'll go with our final, and hopefully our strongest. Adam, what's your chaotic carnage-based pitch?
Carnage-based. We've got that in the sequel, so I don't want to go there. But I like the pitches. I think we've all come at it from different angles, which is good. I'm going to come at it from yet another angle. Well, to be fair, Stuart kind of touched on it. there's two key things that I think Stuart mentioned. One is obviously a relationship with Spider-Man, which is what he's doing for his pitch. So I'm not touching on Spider-Man, don't worry, Stuart. But I am touching on is that Venom's a villain. If you watch his TV show in the 90s, you played the video games, PS1 game, Venom's a villain. He's a villain in all of them. He's an anti-hero in this. I'm doing the air quotes again. I need to stop doing that. Anti-hero. And yeah, and he does in the comics, to be fair. Later on, he becomes a kind of anti-hero. He punishes people, kills them, and he does still clash with Spider-Man because of his methods. But yeah, okay, so that comes later on. That's a character development. We're getting a starter Venom with but it's a developed character. I don't like it. I want to make him evil. I want Eddie, I want him to, when he loses everything, I don't want him to just, okay, he gets his chance to go back and he can take his chance to go back because he wants to take Carlton Drake down. Yeah, okay, that works for his motivation. The Venom symbiote, it knows everything about you. It's in his head. Well, it's meant to. It's in your head. It would know that in his heart, he wants to hurt and he wants to kill the people that have wronged him. He wants to take down Carlton Drake. He wants to hurt his ex. And I think we should lean into it. I want this to be a wee bit more almost horror-based. I want us to follow Venom as he goes on a rampage. I want him to take down the people that he feels have wronged him. I think that's what's better. I want the Venom symbiote to be this little voice in his head to encourage him to do it. When he has those moments where he's like, let's not do this, the Venom symbiote should push him further. It's stronger than him. That's what we've seen in the comics. It's what we've seen in the films, is that the symbiote, when it's bonded with you, when you're feeling down, it's stronger than you. It can get you to do anything, really. I think that would work better. I just think that I want to see Venom go, and I want to see a true Venom. I want to see us get to the end of the film. I don't want a happy ending. We've had too many happy endings in superhero films over the years. I'm done with seeing a superhero film where it all works out in the end. I want to see us at the end where we're not sure where it's going to go. I think that would just, for me, would just work better. And that's my pitch. Please, questions, hit me.
So like, I'm really on board with that pitch. I really like it. But one thing I'd like, is there going to be a villain in the film, or is it going to be a bit, say, if you've ever seen the film Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, which is a fantastic film, where it's all about his actions. It's a very dark film with all his motivations. Would it be that kind of story?
Yeah. I think you've got, it's that kind of story. I think you could have some driving points or some opposite characters. I really hated the final fight with Venom and Riot, so I don't even think there's any need for it to be another symbiote. I think they can be involved. I think Riot can be involved as a symbiote because if we stick to the origins they're given this, is that Riot's the team leader or whatever. So part of the reason the Venom symbiote wants to help him take down Carlton Drake, not just because he feeds on his inner desires, but also because he wants to stop the other symbiotes. He wants to have Earth to himself. And then we can leave off with the film and we have that same ending, if you want, with Carnage, where he meets Cletus Cassidy, but instead we find off that there's a symbiote he's missed, there's a symbiote that's landed somewhere else. And it's like, that's it. So then that sets, we can set ourselves up for the second film. But I kind of want it to be more self-motivated, self-driven from Venom's point of view.
Nice, I like that.
The idea of an actual super villain movie is quite appealing. Not just like a super hero or an anti-hero movie where there's like some good redeeming quality at the end. Just giving an entire film to set up the power, the strength, and the motivations of a villain to, yes, then come with a sequel, and maybe you throw in Spider-Man 2 to make it more appealing. But that's quite a good idea. I would. That would probably get my.
Yeah, because I only watched this film in the cinema because it was like, it was Venom, and I had a Cineworld Unlimited card, so I could see it for free. I honestly wouldn't have paid money to see this film, going off what I'd heard about it. See if I could see a trailer and it was Venom and he was dark and he was the villain, and I would go, wow, like, okay, I need to see this. This is one of my favourite ever characters. I want to see it.
I feel like I might just win you the vote here by saying that if you do go down that route, you could open up an opportunity in a later film to introduce Spider-Man. Whereas with the film that I've just watched, there's no way you can bring in Spider-Man into that. There's just, now that Venom's kind of a good guy, it just doesn't feel right to bring in Spider-Man, whereas if he's still a bad guy and for the whole film in the second one, you could still bring in Spider-Man. But I'm not going to vote for you.
Thanks.
So we've had a round of some very strong pitches. Just a quick recap in case you are unsure. Jack repitched the motivations of the villain to be changed to the lead scientist and have the symbiote Scream, not Riot, be the villain. Stuart just wants it cancelled. Reese would like to recast the lead with Michael Cera, offering a slightly different approach to Eddie Brock. And Adam would like to change it more to Venom being an actual villain, maybe kind of lead more to a kind of horror story, and not necessarily have a good ending, but have a true setting place of the character Venom. So while we wait for our illustrious panel to send over their votes to me, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you guys a challenge to head over to our Twitter account at _bigpicture and tell us what you think of the movie Venom and how you would fix it. So while I look through the votes here, coming in tied last is Jack and Stuart. Congratulations, boys.
We did it, Jack. We did.
And then in first place with 2 votes, it's your boy. It's the true carnage. Is Adam Borkiewicz. Adam, you are the Big Pictures champion.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.
So I mean, you can tell by the applause. The Venom movie was not really something that was overly impressive to us here at the Big Picture, and by and large, the population as a whole. If you haven't seen the movie, don't. But if you have, let us know what you think. That's all we have time for today. We're coming up in December, so we're going to have some more Christmas-themed shows coming up, including a year in review coming soon at the end of the year. So thank you for your time and following us over here at The Big Picture. Just a reminder, you can get us on all your major podcasting platforms, Google Play, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at _the Big Picture. Thank you and take care.